Yeah, what's going on, man?
Dude, I'm exhausted. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah, look, we don't intend on doing a full blown Steve Jeltz here, which is our sports centric, Philly centric podcast. We're just going to do our regular show, but we got to talk a little bit about what just happened. Because my goodness,
Dude, talk about an historic night. Um, and it's rare when you have games like this that'll stick in your memory that aren't related to like clinching a playoff spot that are regular season games. Um, I can think of a few off the top of my head. There was that game that ended at like 4 in the morning back in the '93 season, where I forget how many innings they ended up. It was like 19 innings or something like that, or
yeah, it was
20
a
some
goofy
innings or
long
whatever.
game. Yeah,
Yeah. The game where, and there's games where you can remember individual things. Like obviously, Doc's no hit or Doc's perfect game in Miami. The game where what's his name, Aaron Rowan ran into the fence
hmm
and then afterwards gave the complete antithesis to the Ricky Waters answer, um, for who, my teammates, for what to win the game. Whereas Ricky Waters famously, after short arming a catch against the Seattle Seahawks in the opener 1 year, that he said, "For who? For what? I'm gonna catch that ball and then I'm gonna get hit and we're still gonna lose the game." So, like the anti Philly answer.
exactly.
So, no, man. So we've got we've got so much to unpack from this game. First and foremost, Michael Lorenzen with the no hitter.
Yeah, which is awesome. And his Philly's home debut, only
Yeah.
second start as a Philly. So yeah,
And then we've got Castellanos' 200th homer of his career. I was gonna say of
yeah,
the season. No, not of
yeah.
the season.
No, yeah. One number 199 and 200 tonight. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, and then we've got Weston. What I always mess up his late. Is it Williams or Wilson?
It's Wilson, yeah, Weston
Wilson.
Wilson.
So Weston Wilson goes out. His very first game in the majors. His dad's in attendance. His family's there. Kid comes up, hits a homer in his first at bat, and proceeds to have a good night. What did he have? 3 runs scored, 2 RBI or something like
Yeah,
that?
his line was 1 for 1. Obviously, the home run, as you mentioned. He walked twice. He scored 3 times, stole a base. I mean, right now he has an average of perfectly 1,000 and and an OPS of 5,000.
Hey man, I'll take it. I will take it. So just outstanding all around. Just like feel good, and you gotta love the vibe that's starting to build around this team. And it started with the Trey Turner ovation, and it's just continued. You have Bryce Harper helping the little kid that got lost find his parents, you know, and then taking a picture with him and stuff. You got just everything. Like Trey Turner turning it on after that. And then buying billboards all over South Philly, all over Philly to thank the fans for having his back. You know, there's just so much of this these good vibes going on with this team, and you got to wonder how far it can take them, because really
Yeah.
that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Once you get into the playoffs, once you punch your ticket, man, all you got to do is get hot.
Yep.
We saw that with the Braves 2 years ago. We saw that with the Phillies last year. They were the last team in, the worst team in the playoffs, and they run from the National League side. They run to the World Series. Now,
Yeah.
granted, the Phillies didn't win it like the Braves did, but still, that's a hell of a thing.
Yeah. They ran it to 6, and we've talked on our Steve Jeltz, and even prior to us really doing that on other podcasts about what reasons why they couldn't quite hold that down. But no, tonight was special. Tonight was awesome. Everything's starting to click. Some of these moves that they've made have starting to look like they've already paid off in dividends, particularly the Lorenzen deal. So no, really excited to see where it goes, and obviously we're going to be talking about that at length when we do our full blown sports episodes.
Yes.
So
But let's move on. Let's move on to some stuff that maybe the non-sports fans among us want to hear about or don't want to hear about. I don't really care. It's just stuff that we want to talk about.
yeah, exactly. It's our show.
It's our show. We have the microphones and you do not. So you will listen to every goddamn word we have to say unless you don't download the podcast and listen to it.
Yeah, that was kind of like a Vince Russo-ish thing there you had going. I don't know.
It was that don't insult me like that.
Just kidding.
That was Adam Sandler from The Wedding Singer, man.
I know.
Come
But
on.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends, and then you called me Vince Russo.
No, well, I had to bring him in because I actually watched a couple episodes last night of Dark Side of the Ring, trying to catch up on the rest of the season. But watched the Bam Bam Bigelow episode, and I could speak to that one because that was pretty interesting. It's rough. It's kind of sad to see how he kind of flamed out and pill addicted and whatever at the end of his career, and died so young.
Was that a pun because of the flame tattoo on his head?
Yeah, I try.
I mean, that'll tie into something later on that we're going to talk about.
Exactly. I like it. But also watched the Bash at the Beach 2000, and that one was very heavy Vince Russo because of his antics on that pay-per-view. So,
not Vince Russo.
No, and they just kind of go into it's the same Bash at the Beach stuff that we all know. It's if you're not familiar with that pay-per-view, it's not worth watching.
No.
But it's worth reading about because it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
It's just more of well, we agreed on this, we didn't agree on it, and it's just basically separate interviews of him and Bischoff going back and forth. But didn't really learn too much new with that one. But the Bigelow one was interesting. Him, how young he came up really, and then basically gets sent around, goes to Japan, pops back over to do the stuff with LT, then goes to ECW, and obviously has that amazing run. And but the entire time, especially basically ECW on, it's just like really massive pill addiction because he was just trying to make it,
right.
And it's it was kind of sad to watch, I've said it on here before with you, and I got to meet him and actually had a drink with him, and it just sucked to see kind of how he really was the last decade, and right. 45 years old, man, he's too young.
Yeah, too damn young.
But all right, you mentioned Flaming Head though. We got to save the funniest stuff for last on this one.
Yeah,
you have a fun tidbit about our good old friend Mr. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But until then, there's a show that was released on Peacock here back in the end of July, and it's based off the Twisted Metal video game series that I believe debuted in 95, 4, 6.
Let's see. Let's use the good old Google machine.
Yeah, let's see. I know Twisted Metal 2, I believe, is 96.
See, it's all right.
95.
Yeah, it's giving me. So I look it up and I look up when did Twisted Metal come out? February 14th, 2012. No, not the PS4.
No,
one.
Yeah.
And then it gives me like Twisted Metal Black, Twisted Metal Head On, Twisted Metal 2, Twisted Metal 4, Twisted Metal 3, Twisted Metal Small Brawl, and then it goes to Rogue Trip and Critical Depth, but it never shows me the actual original Twisted Metal.
Yeah. No, there's
November 5th, 1995.
Yeah, so 95. So you have a series that's been around for a long time in the video game realm, although oddly enough, they haven't had a game in over a decade. Yeah. So you basically have a shelved series now at this point, video game wise, and Sony decides to adapt it to a TV show, which goes to Peacock. So now I know you've watched the whole thing. I've watched the whole thing. I don't want to do anything with spoilers really, but what was your take on the series? What did you think of it?
So I went into it, when I first heard that it was going to be a thing, my initial thought was, how the hell are they going to do this? Based on the source material, because if you're not familiar with Twisted Metal, and normally I would say you must have been living under a fucking rock, but then again, it's also like you said, the last one came out in 2011 for the PS3. So Twisted Metal it's an arena vehicular combat game. So you've got all these different cars with weapons on them, just driving around in an arena, and the idea is to be the last one standing, right? Twisted Metal, I mean, they've added different modes, like they've done race modes and all kinds of stuff as you go on through the series. But the main crux of it is vehicular combat, Smash Brothers with cars, if
Right,
you will.
right.
The Mario Kart's combat, the versus modes are based loosely off of Twisted Metal. I don't know if Twisted Metal was the first, but it was definitely, or no, you know what? No, they weren't, because there was a versus mode in Super Mario Kart that came out on 64 or on SNES.
Yeah, yeah, they had a battle mode, and that was
Yeah,
very.
so I
It
think
was
it's the other way
very.
around.
Yeah, yeah, it was. That was very. I don't know. Vanilla, obviously, comparatively, because
Yeah,
we're talking about a Nintendo game. Um, I think the thing that Twisted Metal had though was they kind of went in this really, when they at least in the first few games. I'm talking Twisted Metal 2, and I like to always bring up Twisted Metal Black. Um, whatever little story they could inject, they were able to get a lot of mileage out of like little clips or little writings they had, and it was always dark, but always had kind of a funny spin to it.
right.
Obviously, whereas like Mario Kart in battle mode, they just shot shells at each other, and
It's a different kind of shell that you were shooting in.
yeah, not a whole lot of storyline to it, but yeah, like you said, it was all basically in that vehicular combat space, and it evolved over time. But the thing that I thought was interesting about the TV show is they played a nice homage to a lot of the different things that pop up in the video games. Because I thought that they did a really pretty decent job at character development, at least introducing the characters and kind of saying, okay, this is this, and this is this person, and this is this person. I thought it was really cool. I
Yeah.
don't know. Was there anything that like stuck out to you? It's like, oh man, I really wish they had this character in this one, or they probably could have done this one better, or
So here's the thing. I'm fairly certain I played every mainline entry. So like 1, 2, 3, 4 black, and then the one for PS3.
Mhm.
I don't have very vivid memories of exactly who a lot of them were, like who the characters. Obviously, I remember Sweet Tooth because everybody remembers Sweet Tooth.
Right.
Calypso is the
Yeah.
big bad. I didn't have any gripes with it, honestly. I had no problems with the show at all. I was more or less impressed with how they worked stuff in, because
Mhm.
that I was expecting, like, oh hell, they didn't do even Mr. Slam. They work him in, and goddamn was that
Oh, what a great scene! Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And then the preacher, Jason Matsuzakis. I can never say his fucking name.
yeah. I can't say. Yeah, that guy, fantastic,
Dude. Everything, even Anthony Mackie. Like, I'm not an Anthony Mackie fan, but he killed it.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
absolutely killed it.
yeah. And I thought the entire time, going forward, that obviously, and like I said, we try not to spoil storyline stuff, but character-wise, isn't really spoiling too much. That obviously his was trajectory toward roadkill. We all
Right.
kind of knew that based on just look at his vehicle, even early on, and how his character development went. But there was one that I thought I was like, I guessed wrong on who the character was, but it's really only because I played Twisted Metal 2 a lot more than I played 3. And that was the one that the medicinal herb girl.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was Grasshopper, but I was wrong. It's actually Flower Power, who doesn't appear until 3.
Right.
I just assumed the Grasshopper because that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
Grasshopper, medicinal herbs.
Right, right. No, it's actually going to be Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Um, but no, it was really cool to see, like you said, Mr. Slam, even though it was like a bit part there. Um, Twister,
Oh,
that
dude,
was
Twister
cool.
was so good.
Such a good job with doing the outlaw thing, because outlaw has been played by different people throughout the video game series. So kind of curious to see where that goes.
Right.
Although it's kind of open there.
Yeah.
Um, the guy that played Sweet Tooth's protege, the bigger
Stu.
guy. Yeah, yep, Stu. I thought he was pretty good, and I could see that going in a different direction too, if and when they do a season 2, which I would think that all signs point to that.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
Ray,
they got it, right?
yeah, the Raven character was interesting. Nev Campbell plays her in the series. Raven was the driver of Shadow, and so that, I don't know, that was kind of interesting. Shadow was always an interesting character because then they introduced Brimstone, who obviously Brimstone would be more the preacher. But it's, I don't know. I know they are different, but it's still kind of like, I don't know. Like, what is she gonna end up driving? Because she will.
Yeah. Oh,
Gonna have to.
eventually, yeah.
You know, I would imagine that Calypso turns on her.
Yeah.
Makes
Oh,
her
I
into a
think so.
kid.
He's already sown the seeds of the major heel turn on her. Like,
Yep.
he's obviously the biggest heel in the deal,
Oh
but
yeah.
he's going to turn on her, and he's already sown those seeds. We won't ruin it, but
Yeah, and they tease some other characters, because that was one thing. I'll say this: I was kind of disappointed that they didn't really do a whole lot with Mr. Grimm. Mr. Grimm is by far my favorite character, so I'm hoping that have a dose starting season 2. The only thing with him is that he has a varying storyline. I'm curious to see how they take that, because his storyline from how he started to how like it went in Twist Metal Black, where
right.
he's basically this war vet wearing someone's skull, is
Yeah.
entirely different than like a Ghost Rider type character that he initially came in as.
And I'm trying to remember because, like I said, it's been forever since I've really messed around too much. But I do remember Mr. Grimm being a player or a character that I used. Um, but I just, again, it's been forever, like, since I've done it.
Yeah, and they've introduced Spectre in a way. And Spectre's again another one that was played by different people. The one thing I was reading an article, and I can't remember where, but the one guy, he's not in it very long, but he plays basically protege at the beginning to Agent Stone. Supposedly that guy was a link to Crimson Fury. I
Oh,
don't know where they made that connection. But Crimson Fury goes back to the original game, so
yeah.
I still don't know where the link is there. And
Hmm.
but then he didn't last too long in the show, so I don't know where that goes.
Yeah. Maybe like I don't know. I don't know if they would delve into the supernatural as far as
That's
goes.
kind of what I was wondering. I wonder if they go that route, because if they do, they can obviously, you know, I don't know, bring people back, and
Right.
you know, but it would make sense though, because I mean, what happens in the video game? They
Right.
die and they come back.
Yeah.
So. But one character I thought of, and I was like, "There's no way they're ever going to touch it." But man, I wish they would. Is Thumper?
Yeah.
You know, I always hated playing against anyone that had him, because if you were caught in the wrong spot, man, you're toast.
Yeah, I think Thumper was one of the ones that I used. That was the one with the speakers, right? That
He had the big pink like lowrider, and that would shoot
Yeah.
flames right out the front and
Yeah.
smoke you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the ones. I'm I'm interested to see. I don't remember, and again, we're trying to not spoil, but Axel obviously wasn't.
no, but I've heard that he's going to be a big part of 2 or season 2.
Yeah, I feel like there was something about him. Like, I feel like we saw something about,
Yeah,
like, basically. Okay, yeah. So I'm not
yeah,
imagining that. I
yeah.
couldn't remember
No,
if that was
no,
like me just like,
no.
man, I
Toward the end, and the same thing with Mr. Grimm.
okay.
They did tease that out a little bit, and again, it's not really spoiling much. I mean, it's these characters are conducive throughout the series.
Right.
and they're very popular characters and they're famous characters. So it's odds are that they're going to show up. Um, I think the one thing I was curious about though, and I was curious to see your thoughts. So in Twist Metal Black, Brimstone, who's basically the preacher in the
Mhm.
show, his special is that he throws believers off of his car and they explode. Now, in the series, they do show him like upside down crucifying people.
Yeah.
So I wonder, would that be his special
He just flings crucified followers,
that are like
like
all bombed up?
or yeah, or like the well, I guess all right, so it wasn't his followers really that he crucified upside down unless they challenged him.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe they do that. Maybe they put dude, can you imagine that? I mean, I'm sure they got blowback on that as it stands. Can you imagine the blowback if they're actually flinging like inverted crucifixes at people?
It's I would say that, but man, it's been in the game for 20 years, 20 years.
Yeah, but you and I both know that that doesn't matter.
That's
Once
a good
it's
point.
it's once some like parents group gets a hold of it and they're like, "Oh no, our children can't see this. It's sacrilegious and blah blah blah."
Yeah. Well, I think that's the other thing too. This show obviously geared for two audiences: one, people that are our age, or especially the way the whole show is. I mean, the soundtrack's awesome for one, but it's definitely 17 plus. There's no doubt about that. I don't think any kid should be touching this one.
Right.
I mean, and it's got a decent level of gore, but it's just the way it is, the way it's presented. And quite honestly, I'm kind of shocked the way they got away with some of the things they did anyway. Because in this day and age, when the sensitivity levels are off the charts,
Right.
man, they did a lot. I was like, wow, I'm impressed actually.
Yeah, I was surprised that a lot of it went through. But again, you know, I guess not at the same time. Um, there was just whew, a lot to unpack and a lot that they did that was just like, holy crap, they really just did that. But
Yeah, and it was apparently, if I've read a thing within the last couple of weeks, it's already hit like one of Peacock's most streamed comedies, and it's hit some really good numbers for them apparently. So my only thing is though, I don't see how this goes past two seasons
no, no, I don't think it can. I mean,
unless they delve into the supernatural,
maybe, or if
because
I
you've
mean,
already basically exhausted your roster of characters that I'm sorry, but characters that people care about.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll have to see how it goes because it could there's a way that it goes longer, but they would really have to drag out the second season. Like
Yeah,
it would have to be a lot more they'd have to stretch out the second season to the point where, it only deals with a couple of things, and then the whole third season would have to be God, I don't wanna say anything because I don't really wanna spoil it, but I guess if the third season is just after the aftermath of season 2, what we saw coming up at the end of season 1 gets dealt with in season 2, and then you save the aftermath of that, which would be going after Calypso for season 3.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I just don't see this one going very far.
Right.
It's going to eventually run out of steam, but it's like you know, it'll flame out pretty quick, but for good reason. There's
Yeah.
no way this should be a 6 or 7 season.
No.
There's, absolutely not. And my other thought, and we kind of touched on this at some point or another, whether it was on pod or off pod, but do you think this maybe starts back the conversation? Do we get a game in the next 2, 3 years?
I hope so. I hope that this was I almost have to believe that it was originally planned that a game was gonna come out alongside it, and something happened somewhere along the way in development, and it just wasn't good, so they decided to take it back and kinda try and redo it. Um, or maybe this is the barometer, I to see if, "Hey, do we make another Twisted Metal game, and do we make it follow the story? Like, do we basically have it a playable version of the show, or do we do it in the normal Twisted Metal fashion?
Yeah, and my other thing too is the original designer and developer director, David Jaff. I don't know. I never knew how to say his
Jaffe.
name. Jaffe. Okay. Um, he's also famous for God of War, but he was behind Twist Metal Two, Twist Metal Black, which are three of my all-time favorite games, especially Twist Metal Two and Black. I just absolutely love those games. That also did the newest Twist Metal in 2012, and was also responsible for Head On, which it was for the PSP, which I had that one too. It was funny because all the ones that I really loved were all the games that he was behind. I never really got into um, like Twisted Metal 4. I played it a little bit, and I played a lot of 3, but I knew it was different.
Right.
I could tell it was different. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like I love the original game, but I absolutely fell in love with 2. Like I played the shit out of that game until Twisted Metal Black came out, and then I've made sure that I've had a copy of that playable ever since it came out, somehow, some way. It's one of the few games that I've ever done that with, and I've done that, on and off. For I'll play it for a couple days, and then 6 months later, I'll pick it back right back up after not playing it. Just one of my all-time favorite games. But I just wonder, like, he hasn't done anything since 2017. He had, I guess, started a new game studio. The game that he did was Drawn to Death, and it basically hit the fan. Company shut down, and so he hasn't done anything. And he's also kind of a weird guy. Like he was in an interview. This goes back many years now, but this was, I think, even prior to the Twisted Metal in 2012. Where he was interviewed saying, asking about, is there going to be a new game? And he said, oh, no, all the original people that worked on it, except for myself, died in a plane crash, which was not true.
Right.
Like,
what the fuck?
Yeah. So he's a bit of an odd duck. But who knows? Maybe the success of the show, maybe it'll throw a few bucks his way, and maybe they can relaunch.
I mean, and I could see them doing, if they want to kind of follow the storyline from the movie, or I mean, from the show loosely, you could do it as like, you know, mini tournaments, and in between like some GTA type levels, or areas where
Right.
you go around and you make money to upgrade your vehicle and that kind of stuff, and you do
Yeah,
missions.
yeah, because you could see this one being a very easy one. You could microtransact,
Right.
for different skins, different colors, different paint jobs, and whatever. But you could still have a core game that people could care about without having to really dive into that part of it.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, even games that we play all the time, like MLB The Show and all these, they microtransact the hell out of you.
Yeah.
It sucks, but I mean that's just part of the nature of the culture we live in now with video games. So,
Sadly.
but actually, one other video game related thing before we jump into Mr. Spider-Man here. I was curious. I'd seen this come up in the PlayStation Store, and I knew it was announced. But the release or re-release, I should say, of the remake of Silent Hill 2. So I don't know if you'd seen that or not.
No, I've never played a Silent Hill game.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Plus, I mean, part of it too is just that I haven't, you know, I've had PlayStation systems,
Hmm.
consoles, but it's never been really my main console. I've
Right.
always gone more for like Gears of War and Halo and stuff like that. Um, but the horror genre, aside from certain games like Resident Evil 4 for the GameCube, um, the Left 4 Dead series, and what was the one, Condemned Criminal Origin for the 360.
Oh, Condemns are great. Yeah.
Dude, talk about, and I know I think we've talked about this before, but that was one of the launch games for the 360, and I got it, and it was the very first game. It was the very first game for the 360 that I ever beat. It was also the very first game that ever made me literally scream and drop my controller.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was sitting in
Yeah.
my house alone playing it, I had the lights off like an idiot, and I'm sitting there, and something jumped out. I went, ah! And dropped my controller. I'm like, fuck, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah, there's something like and I saw Silent Hill 2, man, and it was just that one. I don't know why. Maybe it was the time it came out, because it was still right around that same time frame as Twist Metal Black, and it was really having the PS2 stuff at the time. And man, I just love that game, and just it was just really, really eerie, and and it basically went against, like, looking back on them. So I'm curious to see how they're going to remake it, because I don't know that I would enjoy it as much. But I just, it's unless you pull out your old systems, it's kind of hard to, find anything. They kind of put that stuff behind lock and key. You don't really see that stuff much available, like the original games, as a digital download for newer systems anymore.
Right.
And that, especially that series. But the other one, and I was kind of the same way though. That was pretty much it for me on the horror genre, unless you count like Manhunt, which I guess you could throw that in there.
Yeah, I could see Manhunt being counted as like a horror type game.
It's just creepy,
It
it's a
was
very,
fucking weird, dude.
yeah, it's a very strange game. Like how Rockstar got away with that. Some of that stuff is, that's, I mean, it's why it was banned.
Maybe that fucking game. And then, all right. So how about this? So Manhunt 2 comes out for the Wii with motion murder control. Like, what the fuck were
Yeah.
we thinking, Rockstar? I don't know how well the motion murder control worked. It didn't. They didn't have the Wii Remote Plus yet, so it wasn't 1-to-1 movement. But did you like my? I always envisioned. I never played it, but I always envisioned taking the nunchuck and the Wii Remote and pulling them like this, and then putting them together to pull a bag over somebody's
Yeah, I
head.
mean, that's how it had to be, because that's how the game was. Like, that was the craziest thing. I remember playing the first time I played it, and it's like you start with a plastic bag, and I'm like, what in the world? What is this for?
Right.
Oh, wait, what? It wants me to do what? It's just insane.
Dude,
And
yeah, I couldn't get into it. I couldn't get into it, man. I mean, I wanted to, but I hate stealth games, and that was my thing.
yeah,
Like, it's such a stealth game.
oh yeah, and that's the actual genre is what I call it. But I don't know, just in that creepy thing. But yeah, no, you mentioned Condemned, and yeah, that's
Although,
fantastic.
I shouldn't be surprised that the Wii had Manhunt when it had or Manhunt 2 when it had, what was that game, Mad World? Do you remember that game at all?
I remember the name. I don't remember playing it though.
So it was all black and white except for when you shot people or stabbed people or whatever, it just filled the screen with red. The blood was the only thing that had any color in the game. And it was like I want to say it was like third person, and
Mm.
you had to shoot people, you had to knock them into like meat grinders and stuff, and there was commentary. And the commentary was off the wall. Like, it was out there.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely know I didn't play that one. But no, there was like a really weird time for games though, like the 2000s.
yeah.
Particularly the early 2000s. But yeah, they got away with a lot, and I don't know that you could do stuff like that now. And I think that's where I kind of go back on the Twisted Metal thing. It's like part of me wants a new game, another part of me, for two reasons. One, I don't know how how it would be developed and who would develop it, because if it's not the original guy, then I don't know that I want much with it. But two, it's like, how does that type of game play now? Because now it's like you're so used to like you mentioned, the GTA type stuff. It's very open world, and you can do whatever you want. You can customize everything on the planet anyway. So it's like you're just gonna lock it down and shoot cars with missiles.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. And we've had so many cool ones that have come out that have been, they were always called Twisted Metal clones because Twisted Metal was the first like vehicular combat. Um, but like, what was that? Vigilante 8.
Vigilante 8's awesome. Yeah.
I I love Vigilante 8 and Vigilante 8 Second Offense. I actually downloaded at some point. Microsoft put it on. I think it was on the PlayStation 3 too, but they did a remaster of it,
Hmm.
and I downloaded it on my Xbox 360. And what I always liked about those games is that you see the weapons on the car. Like when you pick something up, when you pick up a modification, it pops up on the car.
Right.
And I would,
Right.
that little tiny fucking thing just always made it cool to me.
Yeah. And I think we should be, one thing too, and this is one of the parts we'll have to definitely pick Richie's brain for. I think a lot of this just goes back to Death Race, the Roger Corman movie.
Yeah.
So I think we probably need to definitely pick his brain on that one. I know he probably knows way more about Roger Corman than you and I do, but I do love Death Race. Death Race 2000 actually is the name, and it's mid '70s. Sylvester Stallone, but it's exactly what you think. And I would imagine that was the crux of Twisted Metal getting its thing. But if you go back through and look at a listing of vehicular combat games, there's actually several before it, and one that we didn't mention. You already mentioned Mario Kart, the Spy Hunter series.
Spy Hunter, Quarantine.
Do you
remember Quarantine?
No, I don't know if I know that one.
All right, so Quarantine, I only played as shareware. You were a taxi cab, and you were in a walled-in city where everybody had this plague or whatever, and you were driving around, and you could run over people in the street and splatter them and get money, or you could take them where they needed to go, and you could shoot you would shoot other cars and stuff. You would fight other cars. It was so good. But
yeah, I'm looking at some screens now. Yeah, wow. 94.
That was fun.
Huh. That's crazy. It almost looks like Doom.
Yeah. No, it was a first person shooter, but you were driving like a taxi.
Huh.
It was just crazy. Oh god, it was so fun.
Yeah, you mentioned Vigilante 8. I was looking to see some other names of games that
Rogue
they actually
Trip.
What was that?
Rogue Trip.
Rogue Trip.
That was a PS1 game.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
That one, that was the one that had the boss tones in the soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Oh, you should know that one then. Yeah, no, I was trying to think if there's anything else that actually they mentioned Burnout, but I don't see that the same way. Wreckfest, that's a newer version of one. It's not quite the same as a Twisted Metal, but have you played Wreckfest?
No, I don't. I went to Demolition All Stars, which was god awful. So we're not.
Oh yeah. No, but yeah, I don't even know what that is. So okay, do you remember the old Destruction Derby games for PlayStation? It's an updated version of that.
Oh, okay.
And so it's the graphics are really good. You can drive some pretty crazy vehicles like a combine, a lawnmower. They do have some racing elements to it, but they do have like the arena combat. Now they don't have weapons or anything. You're just basically like in the Destruction Derby type mode where you're just trying to run into people until your car stops. So that's kind of in that same realm. That's probably one of the newer, say within 5 years. I actually have a copy of it. Watched Tommy play it. It's a fun game. It's not like it's I know I'd go out of my way to play it, but the graphics are really cool considering, especially if you played Destruction Derby or those games, and you upscale that to more modern. Hey, this actually looks real. It's kind of cool. But all right, enough on that. I need to have you speak on this one because I vaguely recalled this. You shared this in our chat, and I read it through just before we started recording. And you've got some Spider-Man you want to discuss.
So I don't know what they're going to call it, but back in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, there was a comic book series called Comic Book. Yeah, it was called Spider-Man Reign. And it was like a dystopian New York. They had a shield around the city, and Spider-Man was he was old. Mary Jane was dead. He had the coolest costume ever. Like it looked like the Rocketeer's jacket, but in Spider-Man colors, and he had like a helmet kind of thing. Super duper cool. But I digress because that was the only good thing about this entire fucking series. So the crux of the whole story was Spider-Man killed Mary Jane with his radioactive spider semen.
So you're saying he wasn't protected,
Right. They were trying to have kids.
but he wears a suit.
His spidey senses weren't tingling because something else was. So Mary Jane died of cancer because of Peter Parker's radioactive spider sperm. And he was shooting webs, not from his web shooters, but Anyway, let's that one joke went on far too long. But apparently they're making a sequel to it. And I guess they're really leaning into the fact that fans think it's terrible, because the ad that I sent was they're calling it, oh no, they're not calling it Spider-Man. They're calling it Spider-Man Reign 2, but they have it as the most notorious Spider-Man story ever told. And then it looks like he's holding, it's supposed to be Mary Jane, but I will guarantee you that's her corpse, because that's like when you think he's talking to Mary Jane, it actually turns out that he's gone crazy, and he's standing at her grave and is talking to her, like her corpse with just her red hair sticking, like her skeleton with just her red hair on it.
Oh boy!
Like,
so is this going to be a continuation?
I don't know how the fuck they can make a continuation. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you right now, it's been a long ass time. Like, I bought the individual issues, unfortunately, and read it that way. And then it became a trade paperback and all that shit. Don't read it. It's not worth it. But I haven't read it since that came out, because it was so fucking terrible. Like, the only thing that was worse than that was One More Day, and that's a whole nother fucking episode. But this was a mini series, and it was terrible. It like, the big twist ending is that Spider-Man's dead, and Mary Jane's dead, and Spider-Man killed her with his cum. And
so what you're saying is they won't be making a movie out of that one.
I fucking hope not. I don't want to see Into the Spider-Verse 2, and you've got, crazy old Peter Parker with Mary Jane's skeleton strapped to his back. Like, that'll go real good with the kids. Are they gonna release an action figure of that?
I mean, they could. And here's the thing, at some point they're gonna run out of ideas, and they're gonna go to the well and be like, "Ooh, they did this story like many decades ago. We're gonna have to release a movie on this because we've done everything else, and nothing else is hitting because people aren't just going ooh and ah anymore." That's what's gonna happen.
So that'll be the equivalent of the Spider-Man or Superman v Batman Dawn of Justice, because it'll be that dark and gritty, and like they'll figure out some other person that for Spider-Man to fight, and that person will say, May, why did you say that? My aunt's name was May. And then they'll bond over that, and then they'll just shoot radioactive cum over each other.
See, I think they should make a comedy out of it.
I
mean, why not?
But yeah, at this
point, although what you said, all I could think of was Perry Saturn and Moppy.
Yeah,
that's basically what it sounds like.
Yeah, Moppy Jane.
Exactly. Yeah, Moppy Jane.
It'll be a jizz mop.